Have you ever been so deeply disrespected that it silenced you, not out of fear, but out of something far more powerful? Not because you didn't know what to say, but because you knew saying anything would only lower you to their level? That moment when someone expects you to explode, to react, to fight back, and you don't. That's not weakness. That's power in its most dangerous form. Because silence isn't about shutting down. It's about choosing control over chaos. And when you master that, you become a force they never saw coming. Most people react. They argue. They try to explain themselves to people who never truly cared to listen. But you're different. You're waking up to a new kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard, the kind that doesn't need validation to feel worthy, the kind that lets disrespect echo into emptiness. And in that silence, something incredible happens. The one who disrespected you is left to face the weight of their own actions. No distractions, no noise. Just the sound of their guilt crawling back to them in the stillness you left behind. You don't owe anyone your peace, not the person who belittled you, not the one who laughed at your pain, not the one who looked you in the eyes and tried to make you feel small. You owe yourself something greater: dignity, control, inner power. Silence delivers all three. It's not about staying quiet forever. It's about choosing your moments, holding your words like weapons, using silence to make your presence undeniable. People expect conflict. They crave it. But when you deny them the satisfaction, you shift all the pressure back onto them. And believe this, nothing haunts a disrespectful person more than the silence of someone they thought they had control over. Your silence doesn't mean you're defeated, it means you're evolving. It means you're learning how to respond with strength instead of reaction. The quiet stare, the calm breath, the walk away without a single word. These are not signs of surrender, they are signs of mastery. You're learning how to fight battles without lifting a finger, how to destroy pride without raising your voice. Stay with this message, because by the end of it, you will understand how to make those who disrespected you feel the weight of their choices without you ever needing to say a thing. You'll walk away, not in anger, but in power. You'll rise in silence, and they will watch from a distance, wishing they had treated you better. Silence is not the absence of response. It is the presence of control. And when you own that, they will regret ever thinking you were weak. Keep listening. You're about to learn the 5 most powerful silent moves that make people regret ever disrespecting you. When someone disrespects you, they're not just testing your patience, they're testing your emotional foundation. They want a reaction because your reaction feeds their ego. It tells them they still have power over you. But the moment you choose not to flinch, not to respond, not to engage, you starve that ego. You dismantle their illusion of control, and that's when everything shifts. Emotional detachment isn't about being cold. It's about being free. It's the moment you stop allowing their words, their attitude, their energy to shape your internal world. You no longer respond out of hurt. You observe with clarity, and you protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. They expect to see you upset. They expect to see their disrespect leave a mark on you. But when you stay unmoved, when you look them in the eye with calm indifference, it confuses them. It forces them to look inward. Why didn't they react? Why didn't they fight back? Why do I feel so unsettled? That silence, that emotional stillness becomes a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable when the reflection is ugly. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't fight. You did something far more powerful. You stayed centered. And now they're left to wrestle with what they've done, alone. Emotional detachment is the act of choosing yourself. Not once, not occasionally, every time. You stop needing closure. You stop needing explanations. You stop chasing apologies that were never going to be sincere. You realize you don't need them to see your worth for it to be real. Because your worth doesn't shrink when someone fails to acknowledge it. It only grows when you honor it yourself. That is the silent move that pierces deeper than any words. That is the moment they begin to feel your absence, not because you're gone, but because you stop letting them in. When you master emotional detachment, you stop being bait for chaos. You stop being easy to provoke. You become still, grounded, immovable. That kind of presence doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to be understood. It radiates strength quietly. People feel it. They sense they've lost access to something valuable. And that realization burns. You've become the calm they can't shake, the silence they can't explain, the strength they can't break. They start to regret what they did. Not because you punished them, but because you stopped reacting. And that silence is louder than anything they expected. This is how you win. Not with revenge, not with rage, but with stillness that can't be shaken. With self-control so powerful, it leaves them exposed to their own behavior. When you stop letting others dictate your emotional state, you take back everything. Your peace, your focus, your power. Emotional detachment isn't a lack of care. It's the deepest form of self-respect. And once you choose that path, they will feel your silence like thunder. They will regret not respecting you when they had the chance. And you'll rise untouched, unshaken, unstoppable. The moment you begin to level up in silence, the entire dynamic changes. You stop wasting time trying to convince people of your worth, and you start showing it through your growth. Quiet growth is powerful. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg to be seen. But eventually, it becomes undeniable. You rise with grace, and those who once disrespected you start to notice. Not because you told them, not because you tried to prove a point, but because you've outgrown the space they tried to trap you in. You've expanded beyond the limits they placed on your identity. This is the silent move that leaves people stunned. You don't retaliate. You don't chase closure. You simply focus on your evolution. Day by day, thought by thought, choice by choice. And while they remain stuck in the same cycles, you're building a new reality. You don't ask for attention. You earn it by becoming undeniable. That's when they start to regret their disrespect. They realize they underestimated you. They thought they could hurt you and walk away untouched. But what they didn't expect was the version of you that would emerge in the silence. You're no longer reactive. You're strategic. Every step you take is designed to free you from their grip. You create progress that speaks for itself, progress that humbles those who once mocked you. Success built from pain, but never fueled by revenge. That is what makes it so powerful. You took the hit, but you didn't fall. You turned the wound into wisdom. And now, the silence surrounding your rise is louder than any words they ever threw at you. They begin to observe from the sidelines. They notice the change, the calm in your energy, the direction in your life, the glow they can no longer touch. And while you say nothing, they feel everything. Their ego begins to crumble beneath the weight of your silent success. Because now, you've become living proof of what they tried to deny. You didn't need them. You didn't need validation. You needed distance. And in that distance, you found yourself. Keep building in silence. Let your focus be your response. Let your healing be your power. Let your evolution be the only answer they'll ever get. You don't owe them an explanation. You owe yourself transformation. Growth isn't loud, it's patient, it's disciplined, and eventually it shows. The people who disrespected you will realize, too late, that they pushed away someone who was destined for more. And while they're stuck remembering the version of you they once knew, you'll be living as someone they can never reach again. Let your silence become the proof. Let your progress be the revenge. Let your life speak what your lips never needed to say. This is how you make them regret it, by becoming everything they never saw coming. Walking away without a single word can be more powerful than 1,000 arguments. The silent exit isn't about running. It's about refusing to stay where your value isn't recognized. You don't leave with rage, you leave with clarity. And that kind of departure speaks volumes. When you remove yourself without begging, without warning, without drama, you send a message that can't be ignored. You say, without ever speaking, I know what I bring and I won't waste it here. That decision shakes everything. Because silence after disrespect forces reflection. It leaves space for realization. And in that space, they begin to understand what they lost. You don't need a final word. You don't need to explain your pain to people who caused it. When you walk away silently, you take your power with you. And suddenly your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. They look around and realize they're left with their own noise, their own guilt, their own choices. And that's when the regret begins to grow. Because now you're not there to absorb their chaos. You're not there to soothe their ego. You're gone. And the silence you left behind speaks the truth they tried to ignore. Leaving isn't weakness. It's self-respect in motion. Staying where you are unseen, unheard, and disrespected is what drains your soul. But walking away without a scene shows that you've outgrown the need to prove anything. Your silence becomes a boundary, one they never saw coming. And boundaries enforced in silence are the ones people remember most. They don't just notice your absence. They feel it. It lingers. It haunts. Because you didn't give them closure. You didn't give them the emotional high of a dramatic ending. You gave them stillness. And that stillness makes them confront what they never wanted to face, their actions. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about healing yourself. You leave so you can breathe, so you can grow, so you can finally pour your energy into something that gives back. And as you move forward, they stay behind trapped in the moment they lost you. Your silent exit becomes the turning point in their story. They may not admit it, they may never say it, but they will feel it deeply because you chose yourself without making them your enemy. You didn't need to tear them down to rise. You just walked away. And now they're left to live in the silence you created. Keep walking. Don't look back. Don't second guess your worth. The most powerful transformation happens when you no longer explain, no longer chase, no longer tolerate. When you exit the room with grace and never return, you take your power with you. And that power is unforgettable. The silence you leave behind will echo louder than any confrontation ever could. And one day, they'll sit in that silence, realizing they lost someone who refused to stay where they weren't valued. That's when regret turns into a lesson they'll never forget. There is a kind of success that doesn't need an announcement. It doesn't ask to be seen. It simply arrives, quietly, powerfully, without warning. When you choose to rebuild in silence, you shift the entire story. You don't post your progress. You don't seek applause. You work in shadows, planting seeds where no one is looking. And then one day, your life blooms. That's when they notice. That's when the ones who disrespected you realize they misjudged you. They assumed your silence meant defeat, but it meant discipline, focus, a storm building beneath the surface, invisible but unstoppable. You didn't need revenge. You needed transformation. You chose growth over drama, healing over hatred, and that decision changed everything. You were never trying to prove them wrong. You were just trying to become who you were always meant to be. That journey doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, "Watch me disappear into my work and reappear as someone unrecognizable." And when they finally see the new version of you, they won't know how to approach it because the one they disrespected no longer exists. That person is gone. And in their place stands someone they cannot touch, cannot reach, and no longer deserve access to. Let your silence be your strategy. Let your results speak for the pain they never apologized for. You don't need to explain how much it hurt. Your evolution already says it all. Your progress is your proof. Your peace is your revenge. When you build in private, you protect your power. No one can sabotage what they don't see coming. No one can block a path they don't even know you're walking. That mystery becomes your strength. It leaves them watching from the outside, confused by your rise, tormented by the thought that they were once close enough to break you, but failed. This is the kind of silence that burns, because it's not bitter, it's not loud, it's calm, it's steady, it's built on the foundation of everything you've endured. And now, without saying a word, you make them reflect. They remember every insult, every dismissive glance, every time they made you feel small, and they measure it against the person you've become. That weight is heavier than any argument you could have thrown back at them. They don't hear your voice, but they feel your distance. They feel the strength of someone who didn't get louder. They got better. Keep your focus. Keep your head down. Let the noise pass. You don't need the world to validate your progress. You only need to keep moving, quietly, steadily, relentlessly. Because one day they will see. And when they do, it won't be your words that haunt them. It will be the silence that carried you through the fire. It will be the way you rose without asking for attention. And in that silence, they will finally understand. They lost someone who turned pain into purpose, and you gained a life that speaks for itself. There is a stare that speaks louder than any shout, a calm, steady gaze that pierces through pride and cuts through ego. When someone disrespects you and expects an emotional storm, but instead meets your silence and unwavering eye contact, it shakes them because they're not facing noise. They're facing themselves. They're not hearing anger. They're hearing guilt echo in the silence. That moment of stillness when you say nothing but look directly through their mask becomes more powerful than any argument. It removes their armor. It forces them to sit with what they've done. And that discomfort, that's where the regret begins. You don't have to defend your worth. Not with words, not with rage, just stand in it. Let your energy speak what your voice doesn't need to. There's a strength in presence that doesn't move, that doesn't flinch, that doesn't rise or fall based on how others treat it. You become a mirror, and most people aren't ready to see their reflection in someone who is no longer reacting. Your silence makes them realize they've lost the ability to affect you. And when they lose that, they lose power. Disrespect needs fuel. It needs chaos. When you offer none, you starve it. And what's left is the raw truth of their own behavior, exposed in your stillness. That moment when you stand your ground, unshaken, becomes unforgettable. It burns into their memory not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. You refuse to let their behavior steal your peace. You refuse to let their disrespect define your response. That refusal is strength. It's emotional maturity. And it's a level of control that most people only pretend to have. But when you truly embody it, you change the atmosphere. You take away their script. You strip the moment of their control. And now, all that's left is their regret. Let them sit with it. Let the silence expand. You don't owe anyone the satisfaction of your pain. Your calm is your shield. Your stillness is your sword. And when they realize they cannot shake you, they start to question everything. They ask themselves why you didn't fight, why you didn't argue, why you didn't explain. And deep down, they already know, because you didn't need to. You've risen above it. You've stepped into a space they no longer understand. A space where your energy doesn't match theirs. A space where you've outgrown the chaos they tried to trap you in. Never underestimate the power of a calm presence. It's not passive, it's deliberate, it's trained, and it sends a message that cannot be ignored. You are no longer emotionally available to be disrespected. You're no longer handing out access to people who haven't earned it. Let your eyes speak what your soul already knows. You don't need to fight for respect. You are respect. And the silence in your stare will remind them of what they lost. There's a silent strength in letting go that most people will never understand. They mistake it for weakness. They think walking away without revenge means you've lost. But they don't see the truth. Letting go is the boldest move you'll ever make. It means you've stopped looking for answers in broken places. It means you've stopped hoping for apologies that never come. You've stopped expecting someone else to fix the damage they caused. And instead, you've taken your healing into your own hands. Quietly, powerfully, with the kind of peace that doesn't need an audience. When you let go, you take back every part of yourself they tried to break. You stop replaying the moments in your head. You stop justifying their behavior. You stop blaming yourself for things that were never your fault. And in that moment, something inside you shifts. You begin to breathe differently, walk differently, think differently. You're no longer carrying the weight of someone else's mistake. You're not angry. You're free. You've stepped out of the storm they created and found calm on the other side. That calm is not silence, it's survival. It's a quiet form of power that can't be shaken because it was earned in darkness. People who disrespect you want to live rent-free in your mind. They want your energy, your time, your pain. When you hold on, you're feeding them. When you let go, you starve them. You remove yourself from the equation. You detach from the narrative they tried to write for you. And now they're left with nothing but their own reflection. Nothing is more haunting than the silence of someone who has truly moved on. Someone who no longer needs closure because they created their own. Someone who no longer reacts because they've found peace that no outside force can touch. This is the kind of silence that doesn't just hurt. It transforms. It teaches. It forces the disrespectful to see that they never had control, only the illusion of it. And when they realize they can't reach you anymore, regret begins to bloom. Not because you punished them, but because you healed without them. Because you let go without making a scene. Because you found joy in places they never imagined you could. That's the victory. That's the revenge they never see coming. You don't have to announce your healing. You don't have to prove your progress. Just keep letting go. Keep freeing yourself from every lie, every wound, every moment that tried to shrink your soul. The more you release, the lighter you become. And the lighter you become, the higher you rise. Until one day, you're so far beyond their reach that all they can do is look back and regret ever thinking they could break someone who was built to rise. You didn't win by holding on. You won by letting go, in silence, with grace, with unstoppable inner peace. Protecting your peace doesn't require permission. It doesn't need to be explained, justified, or defended. When someone disrespects you, the most powerful move isn't confrontation. It's withdrawal, silent withdrawal. You stop responding. You stop giving energy to chaos. You stop showing up for people who feed off your pain. That's not avoidance. That's strength. That's wisdom. It's the ability to see the damage and step away before it spreads any further into your soul. When you protect your energy without speaking a word, it shakes people. Because they expected resistance. They expected arguments. What they never expected was your calm refusal to play their game. There is unmatched power in no longer reacting, in no longer explaining yourself to those who never cared to understand you. You don't fight to prove your worth anymore. You simply become unavailable. Quietly, consistently. And in that quiet detachment, you begin to build something unshakable. You build peace around yourself like armor, not the kind that hardens your heart, but the kind that softens your soul. You stop overthinking, stop doubting, stop second-guessing your value based on someone else's blindness to it, because now your energy isn't up for grabs. It's protected, it's sacred. And not everyone gets access. People notice when they lose access. They notice when your replies fade, when your presence fades, when your attention is no longer freely given. That absence is louder than any outburst, and it forces them to realize just how much they took for granted. Your silence becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see in it, especially those who once fed off your reactions. Without your energy, their control dissolves. Without your presence, their dominance falls flat. And for the first time, they face themselves without distraction. That's when the regret begins to grow, quietly, deeply, inevitably. When you stop explaining your boundaries and start enforcing them silently, you become someone different. You become untouchable, no longer tied to the approval of others, no longer bending to earn respect that should have been freely given. You stop proving and start protecting. Your time, your peace, your future. That shift is subtle but undeniable. People may not understand it, they may not accept it, but they will feel it, and they will remember it. Because there's nothing more unforgettable than the calm after the storm they tried to create, especially when that calm is you. Keep protecting your energy. Keep walking away without a word. Let your distance speak the truth your voice no longer needs to say. You don't have to burn bridges. Just stop crossing them. Your silence is not a punishment, it's a declaration. A declaration that your peace is non-negotiable. That your mind is no longer a battlefield. That your soul is no longer available for war. And those who once disrespected you will come to learn the loudest consequence they'll ever face is the silence of someone who finally chose peace over permission. The more you grow, the less accessible you must become. Not out of pride, but out of purpose. When someone disrespects you and still expects you to be available, to be soft, to be forgiving on demand, they reveal everything about how little they valued you. And the most powerful move you can make is to remove yourself, not just emotionally, physically, spiritually. You create space. You stop answering calls that drain you. You stop accepting invitations to chaos. You stop giving time to people who never earned it. Because your energy is no longer free. It's not on clearance. It's not a favor. It's a privilege. And once you take it back, everything changes. When you become unavailable, people start to notice how much they relied on your presence. How often they came to you for comfort, for validation, for forgiveness. But when you no longer show up, they're left to sit in the silence they created. It's not revenge, it's reality. You're no longer within reach. You've risen to a level where their games can't find you. You've stopped replying. You've stopped explaining. You've simply become out of range. And the more unavailable you are, the more valuable your energy becomes. Because now they realize it's not that you can't be reached, it's that you chose not to be. There is a difference between disappearing and evolving. You didn't vanish. You transformed. You didn't hide. You healed. And now they don't recognize you, not because you're gone, but because you've grown. Growth makes you invisible to people who are stuck in who you used to be. They can't reach you, not because you're bitter, but because you've outpaced their reach. That silence, that absence, it's the echo of your self-worth returning home. It's the sound of someone finally choosing themselves. You don't need to slam doors. You don't need to announce your exit. You just stop opening the door they never appreciated. And when you do, they feel the loss. They feel the difference. Because you were the one who stayed calm when they lashed out. You were the one who gave when they only took. And now, you're no longer accessible. That shift cuts deeper than any argument ever could. They remember your silence more than your words. They remember your absence more than your presence. And they regret every moment they mistook your patience for weakness. Hold your ground. Let them wonder where you went. Let them sit with the fact that your life is moving forward and they're no longer a part of the journey. You're not unreachable because you're cold. You're unreachable because you finally understand your worth. You've locked the door not out of spite, but out of wisdom. Because sometimes the most powerful message isn't spoken, it's delivered in silence, in distance, in disappearance. And the ones who disrespected you will realize, too late, that your quiet exit was the loudest message they ever received. The moment you stop justifying your worth is the moment you reclaim your power. You don't need to argue for basic respect. You don't need to explain your standards. The way you carry yourself in silence sets the tone. People notice when you stop tolerating nonsense. They notice when your energy shifts. They feel the boundary, even when it's unspoken. And those who once disrespected you begin to realize they never truly understood your strength, because your silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you finally had enough. And now the rules have changed. You no longer explain. You enforce. When someone crosses a line, your absence will speak. Not your voice, not your anger. Just the clear, quiet decision that you will not allow yourself to be treated any less than you deserve. That decision is made in private, but its effect is public. You don't chase, you don't plead, you withdraw with grace. And in doing so, you show a kind of confidence that cannot be faked, a kind of self-respect that doesn't bend to please or to be accepted. You're not looking for validation, you're standing in your truth. And the silence that follows your departure forces others to confront their behavior without your emotional labor. It's not about punishing them. It's about prioritizing you. When you stop entertaining disrespect, you open the door for peace, for clarity, for people and environments that don't require you to shrink to fit in. You stop watering dead plants. You stop repeating yourself to closed minds. And instead, you let your silence do the talking. That silence carries weight. It says, I'm not available for dysfunction. I'm not here to explain kindness. I'm not tolerating the bare minimum. And suddenly, those who once took you for granted begin to feel the gravity of what they lost. Not because you changed who you are, but because you finally decided that being who you are was enough. No more lowering your standards just to keep the peace. No more smiling through the disrespect. You walk differently when you know your worth. You move differently when your peace becomes your priority. You no longer beg to be seen. You become someone who chooses themselves so fully that others are forced to either rise to your level or be left behind in the silence you leave behind. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them rewrite the story in their head. But don't go back. Don't soften your truth to soothe their guilt. If they didn't value your presence, they don't deserve your return. Let your silence be the consequence. Let your absence be the closure. Your standards are not negotiable. And once you stop giving access to people who never earned it, you begin to attract what truly matches your soul. You've evolved into someone whose boundaries speak louder than words. And that silence is not empty. It's full of strength, healing, and a future where you are no longer disrespected because you've made it impossible. When you decide to protect your dignity in silence, something powerful awakens inside you. You no longer argue with people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer give your presence where it's only tolerated. You no longer shrink just to keep the peace. Because now you understand your peace is the power. It's not your reaction they fear. It's your evolution. It's watching you stay calm while everything they did to shake you falls flat. It's seeing you respond with grace instead of chaos. That kind of restraint is intimidating because it shows you're no longer emotionally available to be toyed with. People start to feel the distance when you detach from disrespect. They feel the tension of your silence more than they ever felt your words. And the truth is, they never expected you to stop playing along. They thought you'd always answer, always explain, always try. But the most dangerous version of you is the one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who goes silent, heals in private, and grows in peace. That version of you is untouchable. That version can't be manipulated, baited, or controlled. Because you're no longer seeking closure. You're no longer waiting for apologies. You're simply done. You become a different force when your silence is rooted in self-respect, not pride. There's a calmness in walking away without needing to be right. A clarity in not needing the last word, a freedom in not looking back. Because you're not driven by revenge, you're driven by evolution. And your growth doesn't need to be announced. It speaks for itself in the way you move, the way you choose yourself, and the way you no longer offer explanations to those who didn't value your voice in the first place. They start to reflect when your energy is no longer accessible. When you stop responding, they begin remembering. They replay the conversations, the moments, the warnings they ignored. And now the silence is deafening because you're no longer there to soften the impact of their actions. You're no longer there to carry the emotional weight. You've laid it down. And in doing so, you've picked up something far more powerful, self-worth. Every time you choose silence over reaction, peace over retaliation, boundaries over acceptance, you reclaim another piece of yourself. You're not here to be understood by those who chose to disrespect you. You're here to become everything they said you couldn't be. Quietly, unapologetically. And when they finally realize what they've lost, it won't be because you told them. It'll be because you showed them. by disappearing from the places where you were once dismissed, by detaching from patterns that no longer serve you, and by becoming someone they'll only ever speak about in past tense. You don't have to raise your voice to leave a mark. You only need to rise without looking back. And that silence will echo longer than any noise ever could. The moment you realize your silence has more impact than your presence ever did, everything changes. You begin to see how peace becomes your greatest form of strength. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. You stopped begging to be heard. You stopped hoping to be seen. You started standing tall in the quiet power of knowing you don't need anyone's approval to be whole. And in that space of inner stillness, people begin to notice the void you left behind. Not because you vanished, but because your absence exposes what they never appreciated when they had you. You no longer explain your absence. You no longer defend your growth. You let people feel the silence they created. That silence is uncomfortable. It forces accountability. It leaves them face to face with themselves without you to soften the weight of their decisions. And now, they feel the sting of what they lost. Not because you shouted it, but because your withdrawal echoes louder than any confrontation. You didn't have to burn the bridge. You just stopped crossing it. And that decision broke the cycle they thought you'd never walk away from. You rise with calm. You grow without noise. You choose dignity every time someone tries to bait you into the same battles you've already outgrown. That's when your presence transforms into something sacred, no longer handed out freely, no longer available on demand. And those who once mistook your kindness for weakness now sit in the reality that they will never again have access to the version of you they once took for granted. The version who gave chances, the version who stayed longer than deserved, the version who tolerated what should have been walked away from the first time. Now you're different. Now your standards speak for you. Your silence is your filter. It keeps chaos out. It protects your mind. It shields your peace. You no longer need to explain your boundaries. You simply live by them, quietly, firmly, unshaken. And when people cross them, they no longer get a reaction. They get your distance. That's what hurts more than any insult ever could. Because now they know they can't reach you. They can't shake you. They can't pull you back into a space you've already grown beyond. You're not cold. You're clear. You're not angry. You're awakened. You're not rude, you're real. And real doesn't entertain disrespect. Real doesn't perform for validation. Real doesn't sit in rooms where silence is the only form of respect it receives. You've become someone who no longer tolerates anything that threatens your peace, your purpose, or your power. That kind of transformation is rare. And the ones who disrespected you will spend a long time realizing that your silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a life they're no longer invited into. Let them feel it. Let them regret it, and never return to what you had to heal from to become this strong. There comes a moment when your silence becomes your revolution. It's not passive. It's not retreat. It's a conscious decision to stop entertaining the people and patterns that drained your spirit. You don't need to raise your voice to be powerful. You don't need to explain your side to those who twisted your truth. You just stop responding. And in that decision, you reclaim everything they tried to take. Your time, your voice, your peace, your identity. You become someone who no longer waits for respect. You embody it. You walk in it. And those who once disrespected you start to feel the shift. They don't feel it through confrontation. They feel it through distance. They don't hear your pain. They feel your absence. That absence disrupts them more than your presence ever did because it reveals what they never wanted to acknowledge. You were the one who brought peace into chaos. You were the one who stayed grounded when everything around you was meant to break you. But you're not broken. You're just done. And that truth terrifies the ones who thought you'd always come back. Because this time, you left without noise, without warnings, without explanation. And that silence, it's permanent. When you remove yourself without apology, you send a message that's impossible to ignore. It says you've stopped giving energy to those who disrespect you. It says your boundaries are not suggestions, they are final. And now, without access to your heart, your time, your attention, they are left to face themselves. Without your presence to distract them, they feel the weight of everything they took for granted. The quiet begins to scream. The silence becomes a mirror. And what they see now is not who you were, it's what they lost. You're no longer triggered. You're tuned in. You're no longer reactive. You're resolved. You've learned to move without noise, to grow without witnesses, to heal without validation. That kind of power is unshakable. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it simply evolves. And when you evolve past people who never thought you would leave, they're left behind in a reality that no longer includes you. That's the consequence. Not anger, not revenge, just absence. And it's that absence that makes them remember every moment they failed to respect your presence. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong people. And now that you've stopped asking, stopped waiting, stopped explaining, the silence around you grows louder. Not for you, but for them. They hear it every time they reach for you and find nothing. They feel it every time they replay the past and realize you're not coming back. That's the kind of silence that lingers, that teaches, that punishes without violence. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You just need to guard it. And in doing so, you rise. Quiet, strong, untouchable. You are no longer theirs to dismiss. You are your own, and you are free. Detachment is not indifference. It's clarity. It's the deep understanding that not everything deserves your reaction, your presence, or your energy. When you detach from those who disrespect you, you're not being cold. You're being wise. You've simply learned that not every battle is worth entering, and not every voice deserves a response. There is a freedom that comes when you realize your peace no longer belongs to people who tried to destroy it. You no longer seek understanding from those who never intended to understand you. You no longer argue with those who twist your truth. You simply step back and let silence do the rest. The most powerful people in this world are not the loudest. They're the calm ones. The ones who know how to walk away. The ones who know how to protect their energy without creating chaos. You become unstoppable the moment you stop reacting to provocation. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown too strong to be dragged back into the emotional wars that once kept you stuck. You've risen above the noise. You've stepped into a space where your peace matters more than proving your point. And in that space, your silence becomes your most powerful weapon. Those who once disrespected you won't understand this version of you. They'll mistake your silence for guilt, your distance for arrogance, your boundaries for betrayal. Let them. Let them feel the weight of misunderstanding you. Let them sit in the confusion of no longer having access to your time, your kindness, or your heart. You owe no explanation for outgrowing what once hurt you. You owe no apology for walking away from what once drained you. And you owe no return to people who only loved you when you were silent about your pain. You didn't go quiet because you had nothing to say. You went quiet because not everyone deserves to hear your voice. You didn't walk away because you were defeated. You walked away because you were done bleeding for people who never once tried to stop the cut. That kind of growth is rare. It's threatening. It's misunderstood. But it's necessary because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's choosing to no longer explain yourself. Sometimes it's saying nothing and letting the absence speak. And the people who once thrived on your reaction will feel that silence louder than any scream. You rise when you let go of what no longer feeds you. You rise when you stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You rise when your silence becomes sacred, no longer wasted on the undeserving. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them regret. That's not your business anymore. Your only focus now is protecting your peace, moving with intention, and becoming someone whose energy is too valuable to be wasted. The power is in your quiet. The strength is in your distance. And the final move, the one they'll never recover from, is your decision to no longer be reachable. Not out of anger, but out of evolution. There is no revenge greater than living in full alignment with your worth. No louder message than silence paired with undeniable growth. When you no longer seek validation, no longer explain yourself, no longer try to be understood by those who once disrespected you, you transcend them. You remove yourself from their reach without warning. You evolve into someone they never believed you'd become. That transformation isn't noisy. It's not performed for the world to see. It's internal, it's disciplined, and it's absolute. And when they look for you in the places where you used to beg to be seen, they'll find nothing but your shadow, gone, untouchable, unbothered. This isn't about pride, it's about preservation. It's about finally realizing that some people were only in your life to teach you how not to be treated. And once that lesson is learned, they lose the power they once had. You stop trying to convince them of your value. You stop hoping they'll recognize your intentions. You simply rise, and the more you rise, the more they shrink in your absence. Not because you hurt them, but because your peace reminds them of everything they never gave you. They remember the way they dismissed your voice, the way they ignored your boundaries, the way they laughed at your silence. And now that same silence is the echo of their regret. You become dangerous when you detach with peace, not the kind of peace that seeks to avoid conflict, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. You stop entertaining low energy. You stop reacting to immaturity. You stop chasing closure in conversations that only lead to more confusion. You've matured past the point of needing their recognition. You now recognize yourself. You now honor yourself. And that self-honoring becomes your shield. Not everyone will understand your distance. Not everyone will accept your silence. But those who once disrespected you will feel it more than anyone else. They'll scroll through your life from a distance, unable to reach the version of you that no longer bleeds for their approval. They'll speak of you like a memory, not a person, because you've become someone they no longer have access to. And that's the power of silent moves. You don't announce your growth, you don't perform your healing, you let them see the results without ever hearing a word. That's what leaves the deepest impression. That's what makes them sit in their choices and face what they lost. You didn't disappear. You evolved. You didn't cut them off. You outgrew the pain they planted. And now your silence is not empty. It's full of purpose, full of strength, full of the life you created after deciding you were done settling. Let them feel the consequence of your transformation. Let them carry the weight of your absence. You owe them nothing. Not your voice, not your explanation, not your return. The version of you they disrespected no longer exists. And that is the greatest move you will ever make.